Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My guest today is Pastor Vlad from the First Baptist Church here in Neepawa. Thank you for joining us today.
You're very welcome. It's just a pleasure to be here.
We're going to be talking about the situation in Ukraine, but first I just want to talk a little bit about you, sort of introduce you. Now you came from Ukraine about 8 years ago, is that right?
Yes, 8+. Yeah.
And sort of how did you come to the area? How did you come to be in Neepawa?
In Neepawa. All right, so first in November of 2013, we moved from the city of Cherkasy, that's in central parts of Ukraine, to Swan Valley, Manitoba. And that's where we lived for 7 years. And in September of 2020, we moved down to the south, to Neepawa, and that's where I've been pastoring the First Baptist Church since that time. So that's in a nutshell.
Okay, so you've always been working with the church since you came here?
Yes, and even before immigrating to Canada, I had been a pastor in Ukraine. I had taught at the Bible College. But before that, a long time ago, I had been trained to be a school teacher, and I taught English and German in Ukraine just after graduation from the college.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So what sort of brought you to Canada? Was it a decision that you made as a family? Was it someone you knew here?
Oh, that's a very good question. We had some friends who had immigrated to Canada, to Swan Valley, Manitoba before us from our home city, from the same church. Mm-hmm. And they kind of told us that there was a small church looking for a pastor. The church was located in the middle of the fields, somewhere out of Swan River, and they couldn't find anybody who would be willing to move there. And they told them, well, we have one friend who was fluent in English. They thought that I could preach in English, and so they connected us with that small church. And it took almost a year to touch the ground in Canada because of the paperwork and everything. But it was, in 2013.
And it is quite a long process. And you came here by choice.
By choice, exactly, by choice.
The situation now is quite different for people who are looking at coming to Canada from Ukraine.
Yes.
So let's kind of just talk a little bit about what the situation is, what's going on over there right now, just to sort of give us a bit of a grounding in that.
All right. Just to be honest, how should I start, or what shall I say? It's it's tremendous, it's quite horrific humanitarian crisis, especially speaking of the civic population. So many civilians in Ukraine, they're suffering quite a bit in major big cities and in small towns in eastern parts of Ukraine, in some parts of northern Ukraine. And refugees crisis is one of the worst parts of this bloody bath, let me just use that term, because millions of Ukrainians had to leave the country. They just had to flee away from the horrors of war. And what has made it really bad, that so many families are separated. Men between 18 and 60 are not allowed to leave Ukraine because they can be conscripted and drafted to fight in the Ukrainian army. So mostly 90% of refugees in Europe, they are seniors, kids, teenagers under 18, and women. And when they're separated from their fathers, children, speaking of kids, and wives are separated from their husbands. And that's a major issue. That's a tragedy, a real one.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, without expecting you to be an expert in geopolitics, how did this happen? Like, what brought this about?
The major reason is the strong push from current Russian administration to restore the boundaries of the former Soviet Union, and before that it had been the Russian Empire, and they considered historically that Ukraine belonged to that Russian world, to the Russian civilization, because Russian czars and Soviet communist leaders they included Ukraine into their realm, into that kingdom. And so therefore they're still trying to rebuild that empire by means of including force, including brutal military force, not just economically or politically. It's basically the desire to restore the empire they had lost in 1991.
Right. And I know, not from people I know personally, but people who are friends of friends, that a lot of families in Ukraine, even before this happened, a lot of Ukrainian people were living in Russia, a lot of Russian people were living in Ukraine, and families have really become separated along the political lines right now.
Oh yes, it has become a deeply, deeply divisive issue. Because let's put it this way, Ukrainians and Russians, they are Eastern Slavic people. Their ABC alphabet is almost identical. It's Cyrillic alphabet. Many Ukrainians, many Russian people are Greek Orthodox Christians. So basically, many of them have the same religion, almost the same alphabet. Many families, have just relatives on both sides of the border, and lots of mixed marriages have been done for years. And it has become a really divisive issue. Which side you are on? Where's your heart at in all this tragedy? But it's a tragedy. It's a trauma in the hearts and minds of millions. And we can't imagine, we can't fully comprehend the psychological trauma in the hearts and minds of small children in Ukraine. They're growing in the times and the days of this horrific war, of this conflict. And they're separated, many of them, from their fathers, from their dads. And they can lose their dads today while we're having this interview. They can be dead today if their fathers are fighting in the army. They can be dead today, tomorrow. And it's hard to imagine that living in our small, beautiful community, enjoying this peaceful sky. It's so deep and blue. And every morning, you just, whenever you leave your house, it's peaceful. Just no shelling, no bombs. You can walk, you can drive to Co-op or Safeway, and you feel that you can make it.
Yeah. Even when Canada has been involved in global conflict, it really has not been on Canadian soil. It has not been here in our daily lives. So anyone who was, born here within the last few generations has not experienced this.
Yeah.
And it's hard to imagine. Now, and because you've been here for 8 years now, you're not speaking hypothetically. You have family still living in Ukraine.
Yes. I have my mom who welcomed recently, actually not a month ago, her niece, her husband and their son. They fled from Kharkiv, which is an eastern part of Ukraine, to our home city, which is Cherkasy. They were looking for a safer haven for a while. They asked my mom, Auntie, can we come and move to your place, to your apartment for a few days? But they've been staying there for a month, and you cannot see the end of the war in Kharkiv area, which is an eastern part of Ukraine. And so they're quite desperate emotionally, psychologically. We Skype and use different media to keep in touch with them. Yeah, my mom, who is a widow, is still there. My cousin, 5 other cousins, and auntie. We lost almost any communication with them. They live in a village in Kharkiv region, eastern part of Ukraine. Last time when my cousin spoke to my mom, he said, Auntie, we're alive. Praises be to God. We're not allowed to say anything else. Bye. And I checked the map. That part of Kharkiv region is currently under Russian control. Who knows? Maybe they cannot use cell phones. There's no internet. There's no communication with the outside world. It's desperate. And I have 5 cousins living in that village. No communication with them. They cannot leave it because Russian troops are everywhere, actually on all 4 sides. They can see Russian tanks and armed vehicles just beyond their veggie garden on a daily basis. Last time when we communicated, it's horrible. I mean, this is your garden, this is your property, there are some tanks just driving by.
That's honestly, for me, fairly unimaginable to be living in that situation. And I know a lot of people are being conscripted right now to fight. I think a lot of people are also joining voluntarily to defend their country against this.
Yeah. Well, can I say something on the top of that?
Absolutely.
If somebody, say, joins the army to fight for his homeland, and he or she is professionally trained, they know how to fight, that's one side of the story. But unfortunately, whenever you have this conscript system or draft system, in many cases, men were forced to fight against their conscience, against their will. And that can be a major trauma in the hearts and minds of those people. Some Ukrainians did not want to fight. Maybe many wanted to leave Ukraine with their wives and kids. But men between 18 and 60 are not allowed. And it's becoming a major issue for many Ukrainian families because men are not allowed to leave. And often they're forced to fight against their will.
Yes.
How many Canadian man would join the military against their will if they're told, go and fight, go and shoot at other people. You don't know how, you're not trained. You had a peaceful life for decades, and now you're enforced to shoot and fight. And it's not a pleasant picture.
No, and it's not a situation, too, where you can say, we're going to take you aside for a month, we're going to train you, and then you're going to go. This is stuff that's on your back door.
It's on your back door. It's on your back door.
Immediately.
So, and I'm just appealing, asking the residents of our wonderful community, if you pray to God, please pray for Ukrainian families which have been separated by this conflict. Please pray for those moms with kids. Some of them had just lots of kids, and they're in Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, without their husbands and wives around. It's a very serious situation. You're ready to lose your loved one, your spouse, your dad, anytime, any moment. You can hear, sorry, apologies, but your dad died defending his homeland. And now you don't have a father, you don't have a spouse, and you're in another country. You're in another country.
So refugees right now are streaming out of the country. There's really nowhere in Ukraine that people are going to. People are leaving. I think Poland is one of the major locations that people are coming out to right now. Yugoslavia, I think, is...
Slovakia, Hungary, Hungary, mostly Poland,
that area. And so we're having this constant stream of refugees, seniors, women, children primarily, who are now living in refugee camps based on these huge numbers. I think a lot of us have contributed to fundraisers and things like that are going in a general sense to help people, whether they're within Ukraine, but usually people who have left the country, because I think getting resources into Ukraine is probably very difficult right now. So what we kind of really want to talk about today is, what can we do?
Okay, that's a very good and very practical question. Recently, I've been contacted by one Ukrainian immigration consultant from Toronto area, Ontario, and she had been previously referred by my friend from the same city, from the same church in Ukraine. She's working particularly trying to bring Ukrainian couples, Ukrainian families with foster children. In Ukraine, as in Canada, under the social system, there's this foster care program, and quite a few Ukrainian parents, they fostered and are fostering children. So many of those children are full orphans. They don't have their biological parents alive, or their parents were abusive parents and they lost their rights. So some, maybe, God knows how many of those families are in Europe, in Eastern Europe, some parts of Central Europe, and some of them are on the way to Canada. This is an ideal situation when families, men and women with their kids, foster children, can move to Canada. And this lady, she asked me some good questions about our community, how big it is, what's the weather like, what's the climate, are the winters harsh in this part of Manitoba, how about employment. But her major concern was housing. How many rental options are available in Neepawa? Is there any place for low rent or free rent for a while? I told her, I don't know at this point, but I will do my best to appeal to our community, to Neepawa and around. If some of our dear residents of our beautiful community have some options, some ideas, some thoughts, if somebody is willing or knows somebody who can let his place be rented for a while by Ukrainian couple, by Ukrainian family, that would be a real step, a real act of mercy, a practical assistance, because accommodation is number one. And Ukrainian people, historically, you can check this out, they've done really well in Canada. They have proved to be hardworking people, and many of them just integrated so well into Canadian society, into Manitoba. And so that's why we can help. And then sooner or later, public schools, education, Manitoba health cards, it can be sorted out, but accommodation is a major issue. Rent and English skills, helping Ukrainians with English language skills. And in our small community, we have settlement services, we have something set up by public school system, we have ESL teachers who work with immigrants, and we're a community of immigrants. I think if we can help, we should.
And you know, one of the interesting things about Neepawa and the surrounding area up to Dauphin and so on is that we have a history of Ukrainian immigration to this area.
Yes.
We have that background. We have people who speak Ukrainian in the area, quite a few still, which I think makes us an appealing location for someone to work with.
Yes.
Now, this is through official channels. I want to stress this because just opening your doors and saying, come from Ukraine to my house, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
There's a vetting process that's for homes for people coming in from vulnerable situations.
Yeah.
And I think we maybe want to talk about that a bit just to make sure that we're dealing with that.
Yes. As I have mentioned earlier, exactly. Because some cases can be really vulnerable. If it's a Ukrainian mom with 3, 4, or 5 kids without a husband and father around who's still in Ukraine, say, fighting against Russians, such women with kids, they need lots of support. Spiritual, moral, psychological, financial, all kinds of support and assistance. But this situation, if we can welcome one family with forced children from Ukraine into our community, they'll become a blessing. They'll be a good addition, attachment to our community. And even in Neepawa, we have some Ukrainians. We're just one of Ukrainian families. We have some others, not many. But it's here, it's in place. Small Ukrainian community, and some people still speak the language. And so, yes, we really have to be wise, careful, thoughtful as we approach. We don't need to make empty promises, not just opening the doors of your basement or 1 or 2 rooms in your house saying, welcome, you can stay for a month or 2. And then what?
Yeah.
And then what? People cannot necessarily get adjusted to new life within a month. It's a big stress. It's a very stressful situation. You're in another country. If you don't speak the language fluently, you're like, oh, what's going on? Where am I?
Yes.
Seriously.
And these are people who are in this situation by force. These are people who are not, have not made a considered decision. And sort of are, because Canada has now this policy in place where where it's more of a streamlined process to get people into the country. So people may be coming because this is their best option, but not necessarily where they want to be. And I think that is something we need to consider as well, is how to be a support for people who maybe are not super happy to be here.
Yeah. And maybe, just recently, whenever I drive by on Highway 5 to First Baptist Church building and back, I see this new neighborhood just developing so quickly, so well.
Yeah.
And it just in my heart, it was also a prayer. I was thinking, well, I know it's a sacrifice for construction businesses, say for High Life Plant or any other businesses, to build something like a special rental place with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 condos for, say, potential refugees, say, potentially for people who are really desperate. Sometimes, actually, we can see more and more people becoming desperate. Many people live in debts, or they can just barely meet their ends meet. And so I wish just we could have such like a complex, even with 5 condos, 4 condos, with such people who are really desperate. That would be a blessing for them. That would be a practical gesture from our community. We're here to help you. We're here to bless you with what we have, even with some resources. We've been blessed and we're sharing. And this book, which is known as the Holy Bible, it says it is much more blessed to give than receive. If we can give, because we've been blessed, we will be blessed in return, because it's a joyful feeling when you can share what you have with other people. It's just seeing their smiles, seeing their joy, seeing their faces enlightened with something. Because, to be honest, we follow the news. You watch the news from Ukraine, from those refugee camps. The level of despair, anxiety, depression is quite horrific. On the faces of many of those moms and kids, I mean, like, they're like lost. They don't know what to do. For how long? For how long this situation is going to last?
Yeah. And I think it really just imagining yourself in that situation, and in a lot of ways will open your heart to helping people. And we do have resources in place here. So it's not just a situation of I want to help, but I don't have the resources to help. We have those communally, maybe not personally, but communally. We have those resources to help. So what is our path to doing that? Can people get in contact with you? How should we do this?
I would say the first place to go should be the settlement services in town, because they deal with newcomers, with immigrants. Yes, people can contact me. I can leave my phone number, my email. Phone number probably would be better. And then I'll just keep making phone calls to that lady in Ontario. Whenever they see the Ukrainian family landed in Ontario, then she actually told me she would give me a call asking for some more specific details, like, can this family come to Manitoba? And but basically, yes, anybody is welcome to contact me. Settlement services. There must be something in place in Winnipeg. I think so, but we need to do some research on that. Many services in Winnipeg, even at our Richardson Airport. There's even a booth with Ukrainian information. Whenever they land in Winnipeg, they can just see the flag, something in Ukrainian language. But we really need to promote, I don't like this term, we really need to sell Neepawa to some potential and coming Ukrainian refugees. Because it's a good place to live and raise a family. It's a good place. We're in close proximity to Brandon, to Winnipeg is not that bad. We're surrounded by beautiful lakes, rivers, and woods and parks. It's a good place. And some Ukrainians, in fact, many still live in rural communities. They would appreciate quieter life, slower paced life than living in Toronto, living somewhere in Montreal or Vancouver. Some would appreciate our community. That's my hope and my prayer, because we like it. It's a nice community. And between May 1st, October 15th, you can hardly beat Manitoba climate.
It's true. People don't know this. We're like the best kept secret.
Amen. And May is coming.
And just forget about the rest of the year. But during the summer.
During the summer.
And the fall, we're wonderful.
Yeah. So either through me personally, settlement services, even, we have Ben and Press. Come and reach folks working in our local paper, and social services, other places in town, maybe some services in Winnipeg. But it's about communication first, and then getting connected with specific Ukrainian families, like those families with foster children. And some of them might have 7, 9, 8 kids. Can you imagine welcoming such a family into Neepawa? Wow, lots of kids for the school division and daycare, whatever.
But that is actually another consideration, that people might have room for 1 or 2 people.
Yes.
We are talking about families with multiple children.
Yes. This lady from Toronto, that Ukrainian consultant, she told me she has known one specific family with 9 kids. Currently they're in Slovenia on the way to Canada. 9 children plus 2 parents. Well, I was almost like, well, in Neepawa, shall we place them to live in the church building? I don't know, like 9 kids. What shall we do? Yeah, 9 children.
And so you've had some ideas about places in town that might be available.
Ideas? So that's, I'm just stepping on the scary ground. Okay, we have...
Without making commitment, there are some thoughts in
I've noticed that we have some public places, or like parsonages, manses by the churches, and whenever you drive around, you can see a Ukrainian Catholic church and their manse. You can see a Lutheran church on the way to golf course and their manse. And I was thinking, well, it's a scary thought to share that as a minister. But the practical Christianity, if you really love your neighbor, if you want to bless your neighbor, if you want to help your neighbor, well, even if those churches can pray and think about it seriously, can they help with those 2 buildings? They're not sold yet. They're not rented yet at this point, as far as I know. But I mean, they're nice bungalows. They're not perfect, maybe not in perfect conditions, but we could easily welcome, say, 2 families. They have 3, 4, 5 bedrooms, who knows? And maybe if we drive around, look around, we might find something else in our community, just to place some of those families there, at least for a while.
Because we're not looking for very short-term 1-2 months.
No.
But we're also not saying this will be their permanent home. We are looking for something long-term, but also transitional. Transitional,
but hopefully I would like 1 or 2 or more families to stay here for years, for months and years, because they would become a blessing for the community. And so far, the employment is good in Neepawa. We're one of the most fastest growing communities in
Absolutely.
Manitoba. It's a fact. So if we can welcome some new immigrants, why not? It will
Yeah.
be good for economy, for cultural diversity, for everything. It'll
Yeah.
be good. It'll be
And
good.
this is not a situation that's going to end next week or next month.
Yeah.
Even if the conflict does end, the refugee situation and the
Yeah.
need to find homes
Yes.
is going to be ongoing for,
Ongoing.
I mean, I can't really even say when the end of that is going to be. So this is not something that people have to know tomorrow. I mean, the sooner the better
Yeah.
to know, because you have your contact in place who can
Yeah.
help to place families.
Behaving like a school student. Another
Yeah.
thing, Manitoba housing. Recently, we were driving from Winnipeg, just exploring some rural, sometimes gravel
Yeah.
roads. There was at least a Manitoba housing facility in Brookdale village and town. And Manitoba Housing has been trying to sell it, and the price was dropping and dropping. And there was an announcement in Banner and Press, I have seen it a few weeks ago. It said that it's an auction. Whosoever just bids it, or whosoever puts a high price, can buy that. If we look around, if we contact Manitoba Housing, maybe they have something in town which they're trying to sell, but it needs some renovation, some
Yeah.
repair. Those houses, small bungalows, middle-sized bungalows, I think we can find something if we do some research and if we contact those people. And I'm sure if Manitoba Housing can be influenced by provincial government, settlement services, immigration offices, something can be done.
Yeah.
Why not Brookdale? If it can be bought cheap, or
Yeah.
who knows, and renovated, that's not that far away from Neepawa. There's even a small elementary school there.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
even those
Brookdale and
places,
Eden as well, they
yeah,
both have their own
Eden,
schools.
Brookdale, if we can find something between Rrain Mount and Neepawa,
Yeah.
between us and Minnedosa, between us and Gladstone, why not?
And maybe this is an avenue for a contribution from someone else, because they may not have a home or to share.
Yeah.
They may not have a lot of monetary ability to contribute, but
Yes.
maybe they have renovation skills.
Yeah.
Maybe they have construction skills.
Construction skills.
Maybe they have these abilities to help.
To help. I'm sure our community has been and is blessed with wonderful construction workers, people
Yeah.
with those skills like carpenters, electricians. I'm sure they are in place. And if they can see the project, if they can see that they can bless somebody else from another country with some desperate needs, with their hands, with their mind, with their skills, that would be a great opportunity to serve your neighbor with something really practical and beneficial. Yes, we have people, we have some resources, but we need some more ideas and specific projects to work on, because making it more personal. And I would ask that lady one more time, whenever I keep in touch with her again, yeah, give us names, number of kids, picture of the family which is on the way to Canada.
Yeah.
Maybe they're already in Toronto area, but they're not happy there yet. They would like to move
Yeah.
to a quieter place. Give us more information, more personal. Faces, pictures, how many kids, the skills of parents, where can they work, what can they do. Maybe some of those Ukrainians are already electricians, carpenters, construction workers, who knows.
Yeah.
And they can find good employment right away. So something like that. Yeah.
And certainly with the growth rate of Neepawa, we have
Yeah.
new industries starting that are
Yeah,
going to
which
need
is good.
people. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I think a lot of people coming into the country, whether as refugees or otherwise, think about the big cities,
Yes.
because the resources are available
Yeah.
there. But we have resources here as well. And I think
Yes.
that's something to really consider, that they wouldn't be coming to somewhere where they would be isolated,
Yes.
that we have something here to contribute.
Yes, right, you are, absolutely. And even as a small community of close to 5,000 residents, if we combine our efforts, businesses, charities, churches, individuals, all those offices, social services, settlement services, if we combine our efforts, if we work together, having this goal to welcome one family, two family with foster children, that would be great. That would be for the glory of God and for the good of our community. Yeah.
So are there any thoughts that you would like to close with today that you want people to hear especially?
If you pray to God, pray for the needs of those moms and dads and children. And not just pray try to make a research, try to make some contacts with any organization or charity, government or nonprofit organization that are working with immigrants, refugees in particular, say with a focus on Ukrainian refugees. Try to make some inquiries locally. There's an office in town. There are offices in Winnipeg. And Manitoba is very open. That's a good news. Our provincial government is doing quite a massive volume of work trying to welcome Ukrainians to Manitoba. Manitoba is open to them and for them. And so it's basically do your research, pray to God for mercy, for peace in Ukraine. Pray for peace in Ukraine, for this conflict not to last long. And whenever they come, whenever you hear another language spoken in our community, you can hear it all the time. Do your best to welcome those people, embrace them. And I know that we live in a friendly community. I'm sure whenever they see strangers, refugees, they will welcome them. They will embrace them with clothing and shoes and gifts and baked stuff and muffins and cookies, I'm sure, no doubts. But they need to come. But they need some help. As you have heard, accommodation, low rent or free rent, and then employment, then schooling, and all of the rest will come up. But I think it's possible. This book says everything is possible with God. So,
thank you so much for joining me today. And the thought I want to leave people with is that if you want to help, if you can help, get in touch with Settlement Services,
yes,
or they can get in touch with you directly at the
yes.
First Baptist Church.
Yeah, First Baptist Church, yes, and you're very welcome anytime.
All right, thank you so much, and thank everyone for joining us today.
Yeah, have a nice day, a nice week.